Loveless by Alice Oseman. Part 1. Last Chance. There were literally 3 separate couples kissing around the fire, making out like some sort of organized kissing orgy, and half of me was like, ew, and the other half was like, wow, I sure do wish that was me. To be fair, it's probably what I should have expected from our prom after party. I don't go to after parties very often. I hadn't been aware this was actually the culture. I retreated from the fire pit and headed back towards Hattie Jorgensen's giant country house, holding up my prom dress in one hand so I didn't trip, and dropped Pip a message. Georgia War. I could not approach the fire and retrieve the marshmallows because there were people kissing around it. Felipa Quintana. How could you betray and disappoint me like this, Georgia? Georgia War. Do you still love me, or is this the end? When I entered the kitchen and located Pip, she was leaning against a corner cupboard with a plastic cup full of wine in one hand and her phone in the other. Her tie was half tucked into her shirt pocket, her burgundy velvet blazer was now unbuttoned, and her short curls were fluffy and loose, no doubt due to all the dancing at prom. You okay? I asked. Might be a tad bit drunk, she said, her tortoise-shell glasses slipping down her nose. And also, I do fucking love you. More than marshmallows? How could you ask me to make such a choice? I slung my arm around her shoulder and we leant back together against the kitchen cupboards. It was almost midnight. Music was thumping from Hattie's living room, and the sound of her classmates chatting and laughing and shouting and screaming resonated from every corner of the building. There were 3 separate couples making out around the fire, I said, like in unison. Kinky, said Pip. I sort of wished I was one of them. She gave me a look. Ew. I just want to kiss someone, I said, which was odd because I wasn't even drunk. I was driving Pip and Jason home later. We can make out if you want. That wasn't what I had in mind. Well, Jason's been single for a few months now. I'm sure he'd be up for it. Shut up, I'm serious. I was serious. I really, really wanted to kiss someone. I wanted to feel a little bit of prom night magic. Tommy then, said Pip, raising an eyebrow and smiling evilly. Maybe it's time to confess. I'd only ever had a crush on one person. His name was Tommy. He was the hot boy of our school year, and the one who could actually have been a model if he wanted. He was tall and skinny and conventionally attractive in a Timothée Chalamet sort of way, although I didn't really understand why everyone was in love with Timothée Chalamet. I had a theory that a lot of people's celebrity crushes were faked just to fit in. Tommy had been my crush since I was in year 7, and a girl had asked me, "Who do you think is the hottest boy at Truham?" She'd shown me a photo on her phone of a group of the most popular year 7 boys at the boys' grammar over the road, and there was Tommy right in the middle. I could tell he was the most attractive one. I mean, he had hair like a boy band star and was dressed pretty fashionably, so I pointed and said him, and I guess that was that. Almost 7 years later, I'd never actually talked to Tommy. I'd never even wanted to, probably because I was shy. He was more of an abstract concept. He was hot, and he was my crush, and nothing was going to happen between us, and I was perfectly fine with that. I snorted at Pip. Obviously not Tommy. Why not? You like him. The thought of actually following through on the crush made me feel extremely nervous. I just shrugged at Pip and she dropped the discussion. Pip and I started to walk out of the kitchen, arms still slung around each other, and into the hallway of Hattie Jorgensen's fancy country house. People were slumped on the floor in the corridor in their prom dresses and tuxes, cups and food scattered around. 2 people were kissing on the stairs, and I looked at them for a moment, unsure whether it was disgusting or whether it was the most romantic thing I'd ever seen in my life. Probably the former. You know what I want? Pip said, as we stumbled into Hattie's conservatory and collapsed onto a sofa. What? I said. I want someone to spontaneously perform a song to declare their love for me. What song? She gave this some thought. Your song from Moulin Rouge. She sighed. God, I'm sad, gay, and alone. Solid song choice, but not as attainable as a kiss. Pip rolled her eyes. If you want to kiss someone that much, just go talk to Tommy. You've liked him for 7 years. This is his last chance before we go to uni. She might have had a point. If it was going to be anyone, it was going to be Tommy. But the idea filled me with dread. I folded my arms. Maybe I could kiss a stranger instead. Oh, fuck off. I'm serious. No, you're not. You're not like that. You don't know what I'm like. Yes, I do, said Pip. I know you more than anyone. She was right. About knowing me and about me not being like that, and about tonight being my last chance to confess the crush I'd had for 7 years, and the last chance to kiss someone while I was still a school kid, while I had a chance to feel the teenage dream excitement and youthful magic that everyone else seemed to have little taste of. It was my last chance to feel that. So maybe I would have to bite the bullet and kiss Tommy after all. Romance. I loved romance. Always had. I loved Disney, especially the underappreciated masterpiece that is The Princess and the Frog. I loved fan fiction. Even fanfics for characters I knew nothing about, but Draco/Harry or Korra/Asami were my comfort reads. I loved thinking about what my wedding would be like, a barn wedding with autumn leaves and berries, fairy lights and candles, my dress, lacy and vintage looking, my soon-to-be spouse crying, my family crying, me crying because I'm so happy, just so happy that I have found the one. I just loved love. I knew it was soppy, but I wasn't a cynic. I was a dreamer, maybe, who liked to yearn and believed in the magic of love, like the main guy from Moulin Rouge, who runs away to Paris to write stories about truth, freedom, beauty, and love, even though he should probably be thinking about getting a job so he can actually afford to buy food. Yeah, definitely me. I probably got this from my family. The Wars believed in forever love. My parents were just as in love now as they were back in 1991 when my mom was a ballet teacher and my dad was in a band. I'm not even joking. They were literally the plot of Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy, but with a happy ending. Both sets of my grandparents were still together. My brother married his girlfriend when he was 22. None of my close relatives had been divorced. Even most of my older cousins had at least partners, if not families, if not whole families of their own. I hadn't even been in a relationship. I hadn't even kissed anyone. Jason kissed Karishma from my history class on his Duke of Edinburgh expedition and dated a horrible girl called Amy for a few months until he realized she was a knob. Pip kissed Millie from the academy at a house party, and also Nicola from our young theater group at the dress rehearsal for Dracula. Most people had a story like that, a silly kiss with someone they sort of had a crush on, or didn't really, and it didn't necessarily go anywhere, but that was a part of being a teenager. Most people aged 18 have kissed someone. Most people aged 18 have had at least one crush, even if it's on a celebrity. At least half of everyone I knew had actually had sex, even although some of those people were probably lying, or they were just referring to a really terrible hand job or touching a boob. But it didn't bother me because I knew my time would come. It did for everyone. You'll find someone eventually. That was what everyone said. And they were right. Teen romances only worked out in movies anyway. All I had to do was wait, and my big love story would come. I would find the one. We would fall in love, and I'd get my happily ever after. Pip, Jason, and me. Georgia has to kiss Tommy. Pip said to Jason as we slumped down next to him on a sofa in Hattie's living room. Jason, who was in the middle of a game of Scrabble on his phone, frowned at me. Can I ask why? Because it's been 7 years and I think it's time, said Pip. Thoughts? Jason Farley Shaw was our best friend. We were kind of a trio. Pip and I went to the same all-girls grammar school and met Jason through the annual school plays where they'd always get a few boys from the boys' grammar school to join in. Then, after a couple of years, he joined our school, which was mixed in the 6th form, and joined our youth theater group too. No matter what production we put up, whether it was a musical or a play, Jason usually played essentially the same role, a stern older man. This was because he was tall and broad, but also at first glance he did give off a bit of a strict dad vibe. He'd been Jaybird in Les Mis, Prospero in The Tempest, and the angry father George Banks in Mary Poppins. Despite this, Pip and I had quickly learned that underneath his stern exterior, Jason was a gentle, chilled-out dude who seemed to enjoy our company more than anyone else's, with Pip being a harbinger of chaos and my tendency to feel worried and awkward about pretty much everything. Jason's calmness balanced us out perfectly. Jason said, glancing at me. Well, it doesn't really matter what I think about it. I don't know if I want to kiss Tommy, I said. Jason looked satisfied and turned to Pip. There you go. Case closed. You have to be sure about these things. No, come on! Pip squawked and turned to face me. Georgia, I know you're shy, but it's totally normal to be nervous about crushes. This is literally the final chance you have to confess your feelings, and even if he rejects you, it doesn't matter, because he's going to uni on the other side of the country. I could have pointed out that this meant a relationship would be pretty difficult should he respond positively, but I didn't. Remember how nervous I was telling Alicia I liked her? Pip continued, and then she was like, sorry, I'm straight. And I cried for like 2 months, but look at me now, I'm thriving. She kicked one leg into the air to make her point. This is a no consequence scenario. Jason was looking at me through all of this, like he was trying to suss out how I felt. I don't know, I said. I just don't know. I guess I do like him. A flash of sadness crossed Jason's features, but then it was gone. Well, he said, looking down at his lap. I guess you should just do what you want. I guess I do want to kiss him, I said. I looked around the room, and sure enough, Tommy was there, standing in a small group of people near the doorway. He was just far enough that I couldn't quite focus on the details of his face. He was just the concept of a person, a blob, a generic, attractive guy. My 7-year crush. Seeing him so far away and blurry took me right back to being in year 7, pointing at a photo of a boy I thought was probably attractive, and that made up my mind. I could do this. I could kiss Tommy. I'd had times when I'd wondered whether I'd end up with Jason. I'd had times when I'd wondered whether I'd end up with Pip too. If our lives were in a movie, at least 2 of us would have got together. But I'd never felt any romantic feelings for either of them. As far as I could tell, Pip and I had been friends for almost 7 years, from day 1 of year 7 when we sat together in our farm room seating plan and forced to tell each other 3 interesting facts about ourselves. We learned we both wanted to be actors, and that was it. Friends. Pip was always more sociable, funnier, and generally more interesting than me. I was the listener, the supportive one when she'd had her "Am I gay?" crisis at the age of 14, and then her "I don't know whether to do acting or science" crisis last year, and then her "I really want to cut my hair short but I'm scared" crisis several months ago. Jason and I had met each other later, but we bonded faster than I'd ever thought possible given my poor track record for forming friendships. He was the first person I met who I could actually sit quietly with, and it wouldn't feel awkward. I didn't feel like I had to try to be funny and entertaining with him. I could just be me, and he wouldn't dislike me because of it. We'd all had what felt like 1,000 sleepovers with each other. I knew exactly where the broken springs were in Pip's bed. I knew what Jason's favorite glass in my cupboard was. Faded Donald Duck I got at Disneyland when I was 12. Moulin Rouge was the movie we always watched when we hung together. We all knew it word for word. There were never any romantic feelings between Pip, Jason, and me, but what we did have, as friendship of many years, was just as strong as that, I think. Stronger maybe than a lot of couples I knew. Truth or dare? In order to get me physically closer to Tommy, Pip forced us into a game of truth or dare, which both Jason and I protested against, but Pip obviously won. Truth, I said when it was my turn to suffer. Hattie, who was leading the game, grinned evilly and selected a card from the truth pack. There must have been about 12 of us, all sitting on the living room carpet. Pip and Jason were sitting on either side of me. Tommy was opposite. I didn't really want to look at him. Pip handed me a crisp from the bowl for support. I gratefully accepted it and stuffed it in my mouth. What's the worst romantic or sexual experience you've had with a guy? A couple of people chorused, "Ooh," one guy whistled, and one girl just laughed. One short burst of "ha" that I found more embarrassing than anything else. Thankfully, I wouldn't see most of the people at this party again in my life. maybe on Instagram, but I muted most people's Instagram stories, and I already had a mental list of all the people I was going to unfollow after A levels results day. There were a few people at school that me, Pip, and Jason got along with. People would sit with at lunch, a little gang of theater kids we'd hang out with in school play season. But I already knew that we would all go to uni and forget about each other. Pip, Jason, and I would not forget about each other though, because we were all going to Durham University in October as long as we got the grades for it. This actually hadn't been planned. We were a trio of high-achieving nerds, but Jason had failed to get into Oxford, Pip had failed to get into King's College London, and I was the only one for whom Durham was actually my first choice. I thanked the university every day that it had worked out like that. I needed Pip and Jason. They were my lifeline. That's too far. Jason immediately interjected. Come on, that's way too personal. There were cries of outrage from the rest of our peers. People didn't give a shit about it being personal. You must have something, drawled Hattie in her super posh accent. Like everyone's had a terrible kiss or something by now. I was very uncomfortable about being the center of attraction. So I thought it would be better to just get this over with. I've never kissed anyone, I announced. When I said it, I didn't think I was saying anything particularly odd. Like, this wasn't a teenage movie. Virgin shaming wasn't really a thing. Everyone knew that people did these things when they were ready, right? But then the reactions began. There were audible gasps, a pitying "aw." Some of the guys started laughing and one of them coughed the word virgin. Hattie brought her hand to her mouth and said, horrified, "Oh my god, seriously?" My face started to burn. I wasn't weird. There were lots of 18-year-olds who hadn't kissed anyone yet. I glanced at Tommy, and even he was looking at me with sympathy, like I was a little kid, like I was a child who didn't understand anything. It's not that unusual, I said. Hattie pressed her hand to her heart and stuck out her bottom lip. You're so pure. A guy leant over and said, You're like 18, right? I nodded at him, and he said, Oh my god, like I was disgusting or something. Was I disgusting? Was I ugly and shy and disgusting, and that was why I hadn't kissed anyone yet? My eyes were starting to water. All right, Pip snapped. You can all stop being dickheads right the fuck now. It is weird, though, said a guy I knew from my English class. He was addressing Pip. You've got to admit it's weird to have got to 18 without having kissed anyone. That's rich coming from a guy who admitted to having a wank over the princess in Shrek 3. There were cackles of glee from the group, momentarily distracted from laughing at me. While Pip continued to berate our classmates, Jason very subtly took hold of my hand and pulled me out of the room. Once we were in the corridor, I was about to cry, so I said I needed to pee and went upstairs to the loo. When I reached the bathroom, I examined my reflection rubbing under my eyes so my mascara didn't smudge. I swallowed the tears down. I wasn't going to cry. I did not cry in front of anybody. I hadn't realized how behind I was. I'd spent so much time thinking that my one true love would just show up one day. I had been wrong. I had been so wrong. Everyone else was growing up, kissing, having sex, falling in love, and I was just a child. And if I carried on like this, would I be alone forever? Georgia! Pip's voice. I made sure my tears were gone by the time I exited the bathroom, and she didn't suspect a thing. You're so fucking dumb, she said. Yeah, I agreed. She tried to smile warmly at me. You know you'll find someone eventually, right? Yeah. You know you'll find someone eventually. Everyone does. You'll see. Jason was looking at me with a sad expression on his face. Pitying, maybe. Was he pitying me too? Am I wasting being a teenager? I asked them, and they told me no, like best friends would, but it was too late. This was the wake-up call I needed. I needed to kiss someone before it was too late, and that someone had to be Tommy. I let Pip and Jason go back downstairs to get drinks, using the excuse that I wanted to get my jacket from one of the guest bedrooms because I was cold, and then I stood there in the dark corridor trying to breathe and collect my thoughts. Everything was okay. It wasn't too late. I wasn't weird or disgusting. I had to make my move. I located my jacket and also found a bowl of cocktail sausages placed on a radiator, so I picked those up too. As I walked back down the corridor, I saw that another bedroom door was ajar, so I peeped inside, only to get an absolute eyeful of someone very clearly getting fingered. It sent a sort of shockwave through my spine, like, wow, okay, I forgot. People actually did that in real life. It was fun to read about in fanfics and see in movies, but the reality was kind of just like, oh, yikes, I'm uncomfortable, get me out of here. That aside, surely you would think to shut the door properly if someone was going to put a body part inside of you. It was hard to picture myself in a situation like that. Honestly, I loved the idea in theory, having a little sexy adventure in a dark room in someone else's house with someone you've been on and off flirting with for a couple of months. But the reality? Having to touch genitals with someone? Ew. I guess it took time for people to be ready for stuff like that, and you'd had to find someone you felt comfortable with. I'd never interacted with anyone I wanted to kiss, let alone someone I wanted to. I looked down at my bowl of cocktail sausages. Suddenly, I was not very hungry anymore, and then a voice broke the silence around me. "Hey," said the voice, and then I looked up. There was Tommy. This was the first time I had talked to Tommy in my life. I'd seen him a lot, obviously, at the few house parties I've been to, sometimes at the school gate. When he joined our school for sixth form, we didn't take any of the same subjects, but we occasionally passed in the corridor. I'd always felt sort of nervous when he was nearby. I figured this was because of the crush. I didn't really know how I was supposed to act around him. Tommy pointed at the bedroom. "Is there anyone in there?" "I think my coat's on the bed." "I think someone's getting fingered in there," I said, hopefully not loud enough for people in question to hear. Tommy dropped his hand. "Oh, right. Okay then. I guess I'll get it later." There was a pause. We stood awkwardly outside the door. We couldn't hear the two people inside the bedroom, but just knowing it was happening, and we were both aware of it, made me want to die. "How are you?" he asked. "Oh, I said, holding up the bowl of sausages. "I have sausages." Tommy nodded. Good for you." "Thanks. You look really nice, by the way." My prom dress was sparkly and lilac, and I felt fairly uncomfortable in it compared to my usual patent knits and high-waisted jeans, but I thought it looked nice, so it was good to have confirmation. "Thanks. Sorry about the truth or dare game," he chuckled. "People can be such twats. For the record, I didn't have my first kiss until I was 17. "Really?" "Yeah. I know it's kind of late, but, it's better to wait until it feels right, isn't it?" "Yeah," I agreed. But I was just thinking that if 17 was late, then I must be basically geriatric. This all felt weird. Tommy had been my crush for 7 years. He was talking to me. Why wasn't I jumping for joy right now? Thankfully, at that moment, my phone buzzed. I retrieved it from my bra. Filipa Quintana. "Excuse me, butts, where are you?" "Haha, sex." I said sex accidentally. "And butts. Haha, butts." Jason Farley Shaw. "Please return before Pip has another glass of wine." Filipa Quintana. Stop subtweeting me in our own group chat when I'm standing right next to you." Jason Farley Shaw. "For real, the Georgia, where are you?" I quickly switched my phone screen off before Tommy thought I was ignoring him. I began, not quite knowing what I was going to say before I said it. I held up my oversized denim jacket. "If you're cold, you can borrow my jacket." Tommy looked at it. He seemed unfazed that it was technically a girl's jacket, which was good because if he'd protested, that probably would have been it for my crush. "You sure?" he asked. "Yeah." He took the jacket and put it on. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable just knowing that some guy I really didn't know very well was wearing my favorite jacket. Shouldn't I have been the one pleased about this development? "I was just gonna go sit by the fire for a bit," said Tommy, and he slouched against the wall, leaning ever so slightly towards me with a smile. "Do you want to come with?" That was when I realized he was trying to flirt with me. Like, this was working. I was actually going to get to kiss Tommy. "Okay," I said. "Just let me message my friends." Georgia War. Hanging out with Tommy, lol. School romance was on my list of favorite fanfiction tropes. I also loved Soulmate AU, Coffee Shop AU, Hurt/Comfort, and Temporary Amnesia. I figured school romance was the most likely one that would happen to me, but now that the possibility of it happening was more than zero, I was freaking out, like heart racing, sweating hands, shaking, freaking out. This was what crushes felt like, so this was normal, right? Everything was totally normal. When we got to the fire, we were the only people there. No kissing orgy in sight. I picked a seat near the blanket pile, and Tommy sat next to me, balancing a beer bottle on his chain arm. What would happen now? Would we just start making out? God, I hope not. Wait, wasn't that what I wanted? A kiss had to happen anyway. That much was clear to me. This was my last chance. So, Tommy said. So, I said. I thought about how I was going to initiate the kiss. In fanfics, they just say, "Can I kiss you?" which is very romantic to read, but sounded so embarrassing in my head when I imagined saying it out loud. In movies, it just seems to sort of happen without any discussion beforehand, but both parties go into it knowing exactly what's happening. He nodded at me, and I glanced at him, waiting for him to speak. "You look really nice," he said. "You said that already," I said, smiling awkwardly, "but thanks." "So weird, we didn't really speak much at school," he continued. As he spoke, he put his hand on top of my chair, so his hand was really close to my face. I didn't know why that made me so uncomfortable. His skin was just there, I guess. "Well, we weren't really friends with the same people," I said. "Yeah, you're pretty quiet, aren't you?" And I couldn't even deny that. Yeah. Now that he was so close, I was struggling to even see what exactly I'd been attracted to for 7 years. I could tell that he was conventionally attracted, like you can tell pop stars or actors are attractive, but there was nothing about him that really which made me feel butterflies. Did I know what butterflies felt like? What exactly was I supposed to be feeling right now? He nodded as if he already knew everything about me. "That's all right. Quiet girls are nice." What was that even supposed to mean? Was he being creepy? I couldn't tell. I was probably just nervous. Everyone gets nervous around their crushes. I glanced around the house, feeling like I didn't really want to look at him anymore, and I spotted two figures hovering in the conservatory watching us, Pip and Jason. Pip immediately waved at me, but Jason looked kind of embarrassed and pulled Pip away. They both wanted to see what would happen with Georgia and her 7-year crush. Tommy leaned a little closer to me. "We should talk more or something." I could tell he didn't mean that. He was just stalling. I knew what was supposed to happen next. I was supposed to lean in, nervous but excited, and he'd brush my hair out of my face, and I'd look up at him beneath my eyelashes, and then we'd kiss gently, and we'd be one, Georgia and Tommy, and then we'd go home giddy and happy, and maybe it'd never happen again, or maybe it'd message me, and we'd decide to go on a date just to see what would happen, and at the date we would decide to try going out, and on our third date we would decide to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and a couple of weeks after that we would have sex, and while I was at university he would text me good morning and come to visit every other weekend, and after university we would move in together in a little flat by the river, get a dog, and he'd grow a beard, and then we would be married, and that would be the end. That was what was supposed to happen. I could see every single moment of it in my head. The simple route, the easy way out. I could do that, couldn't I? If I didn't, what would Pip and Jason say? "It's okay," he said. "I know you haven't kissed anyone before." The way he said it, it was like he was talking to a newborn puppy. "Okay," I said. It irritated me. He was irritating me. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? A cute little movement in the talk. "Hey, look," he said, a pitying smile on his face. "Everyone has a first kiss eventually. It doesn't mean anything. It's okay to be new at like romance and all that." New at romance? I wanted to laugh. I'd been studying romance like an academic, like an obsessive researcher. Romance would be my mastermind topic. "Yeah," I said. "Georgia." Tommy leant in close, and then it hit me. The disgust. A wave of absolute unbridled disgust. He was so close I felt like I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash a glass and throw up at the same time. My fist tightened on the arm of my chair, and I tried to keep looking at him, keep moving towards him, kiss him, but he was so close to me and it felt horrific. I felt disgusted. I wanted this to end. "It's okay to be nervous," he said. "It's kind of cute, actually." "I'm not nervous," I said. I was disgusted by the thought of him near me, wanting things from me. This wasn't normal, was it? Then he put a hand on my thigh, and that's when I flinched, shoving his hand away and sending his drink toppling off the side of the chair, and he swung forwards to grab it and fell out of his seat right into the fire pit. There'd been signs. I'd missed all of them because I was desperate to fall in love. Luke from year 5 was the first. He did it via a note in my coat pocket during playtime. "Georgia, you're so beautiful. Will you be my girlfriend?" "Yes." "No." From Luke. I ticked no, and he cried all through numeracy. In year 6, when all the girls in my class decided they wanted boyfriends, I felt left out, so asked Luke if he was still up for it, but he was already going out with Aisha, so he said no. All the new couples played together on the climbing frame during the Lever's barbecue, and I felt sad and lonely. Noah from the school bus was the second in year 9, though I'm not sure he counts. He asked me out on Valentine's Day because that was what people did on Valentine's Day. Everybody wanted to be a couple on Valentine's Day. Noah scared me because he was loud and enjoyed throwing sandwiches at people, so I just shook my head at him and went back to staring out of the window. The third was Jan from the boys' school, year 11. A lot of people thought he was extremely attractive. We had a long conversation at a house party about whether Love Island was a good show or not, and then he cried to kiss me when everyone was drunk, including both of us. It would have been so easy to go for it. It would have been so easy to lean in and do it, but I didn't want to. I didn't fancy him. But the fourth turned out to be Tommy, who I knew from school and who looked like Timothée Chalamet, and I didn't really know him that well, but this was like the time that broke me a little because I thought I really liked him, but I couldn't do it because I didn't fancy him. My 7-year crush on him was entirely fabricated. A random choice from when I was 11, and a girl held up a photo and told me to choose a boy. I didn't fancy Tommy. Apparently, I hadn't ever fancied anyone. I screamed. Tommy screamed. His entire arm was on fire. He rolled over and suddenly Pip flew out of nowhere, grabbing a blanket, and falling straight on top of Tommy, stifling the flames while Tommy was saying, holy shit, over and over, and I was just standing over him watching him burn. This was the first time. The first thing I felt was shock. I felt frozen, like this wasn't really happening. The second thing I felt was anger about my jacket. This was my favorite fucking jacket. I should never have given it to some boy I barely knew, some boy I didn't even like. Jason was up there too, asking Tommy if he was hurt, but he was sitting up and shaking his head, pulling off the ruins of my favorite jacket, looking at his unscathed arm and saying, what the fuck? And then he stared up at me and said it again, what the fuck? I looked down at this person I had picked a random from a photo and said, I didn't like you like that. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. You're nice, but I don't like you like that. Jason and Pip both turned to me in unison. Our little crowd was starting to form, our classmates wandering outside to see what the commotion was about. What the fuck? Said Tommy for a third time because he was warned by his friends coming to see if it was okay. I was just staring at him thinking, that was my fucking jacket in 7 years and I never liked you at all. Georgia, said Pip. She was next to me, pulling on my arm. I think it's time to go home. Loveless. I never really liked him, I said, in the car as we pulled up outside Pip's house and I cut the engine. Pip was next to me. Jason was in the back. 7 years and I just lied to myself the whole time. They were both being weirdly silent, like they didn't know what to say. In a horrible way, I almost blamed them. Pip, anyway. She'd been the one pushing me to do this. She'd been teasing me about Tommy for 7 years. No, that was unfair. This wasn't her fault. This is my fault, I said. I don't understand, said Pip, gesturing wildly. She was still fairly tipsy. You've had a crush on him for years. Her voice got quieter. This was your last big chance. I started laughing. It's wild how long you can trick yourself and everyone around you. The door to Pip's house opened, revealing her parents in matching dressing gowns. Manuel and Carolina Quintana were just another of the perfectly in love, incredibly romantic backstory couples I knew. Carolina, who'd grown up in Popayan, Colombia, and Manuel, who'd grown up in London, met Manuel to visit his dying grandma in Popayan when he was 17. Carolina was literally the girl next door and the rest was history. These things just happened. I've never had a crush on anyone in my entire life, I said. It was all sinking in. I'd never had a crush on anyone. No boys, no girls, not a single person I had ever met. What did that mean? Did it mean anything, or was I just doing life wrong? Was there something wrong with me? Can you believe that? There was a pause again before Pip said, well, it's fine, man. You know you'll find someone. Don't say it, I said. Please don't say it. So she didn't. You know, the idea of it is nice. The idea of liking Tommy and kissing Tommy and having some cute little moment by the fire after prom. That's so nice. That's what I wanted. I felt myself clench the steering wheel. But the reality disgusts me. They didn't say anything, even Pip, who was always a chatty drunk. Even my best friends couldn't think of a single comforting word. Well, this has been a good night, right? Pip slurred as she stumbled out of the car. She held the front passenger door open and pointing dramatically at me, the streetlights reflecting in her glasses. You, very good, outstanding, and you, she prodded Jason in the chest as he moved into the front seat. Excellent, really excellent work. Drink water, said Jason, patting her on the head. We watched her walk up to her front door and get gently chastised by her mom, for being drunk. Her dad waved at us, and we waved back, and then I started the engine and we drove away. It could have been a good night. It could have been the best night of my life if I'd actually had a crush on Tommy. The next stop was Jason's. He lived in a house built by his dads, who were both architects. Rob and Mitch had met at a university. They were doing the same course and ended up competing for the same architecture apprenticeship. Rob won, which he claims he earned, but Mitch always claims he let Rob win because he liked him. When we arrived, I said, most people our age have kissed someone. And he said, that doesn't matter. But I knew it did. It mattered. It was not random that I was the one who was falling behind everyone. Everything that had happened that night was a sign that I needed to try harder, or I would be alone for the rest of my life. I don't feel like a real teenager, I said. I think I failed at it. And Jason clearly didn't know what to say to that because he said nothing. Sitting in my car and then on the drive of my family home, the ghost of a boy's hand on my thigh, I made a plan. I was going to university soon, a chance to reinvent myself and become someone who could fall in love, someone who would fit in with my family and people my age, with the world, and make loads of new friends. I'd join societies, I'd get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, even a partner, I'd have my first kiss, and I'd have sex. I was just a late bloomer. I wasn't going to die alone. I was going to try harder. I wanted forever love. I didn't want to be loveless.